So let's start with something about your organization.
Okay, as I was saying, I retired in 2012, started my own company because I only done physical security all of my life, and so I decided that I would do what I used to do when I was working for the Department of Defense, and that was to teach classes on how to build buildings to withstand bomb blast and reduce criminal activity, reduce the effects of terrorist attack, that kind of thing. So, and that's what my company's been doing since 2012. Fortunately, some friends of mine put me in touch with a company here in India, and we're now going to start offering classes in India.
Here the entire democratic setup, the economic setup is very different than that of the United States of America. And also the prime concern now is that the allocated budget is just 6,000 crore for the smart cities in the first phase, and the rest would be done by private funding. So how do you think such sophisticated security facilities would be implemented in the Indian scenario?
Right. Well, actually, I think that there's a benefit of starting from scratch. If you incorporate security into the building design at the very beginning, it usually runs about 2% of the total cost. About 2% of the total cost. If you add security at the end, it's about 20% of the total cost of the project. So what happens is, normally a project comes about, an architect's involved, an engineer's involved, and then the owner says, yeah, that's the building I want. And then they say, let's get some security. Where if we put security in the beginning, that's talking to the architect, talking with the engineer as they're engineering the building, then we can reduce the overall cost short term, because at the end of the project it costs less, but also long term, because I'll give you an example. I looked at a building, I did an analysis on a building in Washington, D.C. They added security at the end of the project. They had 176 cameras, where in reality they only needed about 20 cameras if they had designed the building correctly. So they ended up spending hundreds of thousands of dollars for nothing. And because they had so many cameras, now they had to also have additional guards to watch those cameras. Guards, for every one guard, it's actually 6 people, because they have to do it 24 hours a day, and then one of them goes on vacation or is sick. So there's enormous follow-on costs, long-term costs, if you don't design it right at the very beginning. And the only way you can design it right at the very beginning is to include all the disciplines: engineers, architects, planners, facility managers, security people. Get them all together, talking with the owner that's going to actually build the building. So I think the fact that India is going to build all these smart cities it's a great opportunity to do it right, and at the same time make the money go further long term by doing it right at the very beginning.
So how do you think the buildings and the infrastructure here would be earthquake resistance, or for that matter any disaster resistance?
You have to design it. It's that simple. Most buildings are designed so that they can withstand high wind, because there's pressure on the side of the building, or they're designed to shake, so they move back and forth this way. But what happens with bomb blast is the blast wave expands in all areas. It goes up and down and until it hits resistance, and then it dissipates and it bounces back and forth until it equalizes. And so a building needs to be designed to shake and raise up and settle back down. So it has to be integrated both vertically and horizontally. Otherwise it'll collapse. And that's what happened in that example of Oklahoma City.
Right. Well, this existing smart city concept of Government of India includes the marginalized communities and physically challenged communities as well, and also the slum communities. So do you think infrastructure such as these would be a full-fledged government plan? What is the extent of private partnership funding which would help in such projects? Because the projects you're talking about is feasible only in well-developed countries. The infrastructure and the technology which you're talking about. Do you think it is really feasible in India?
Sure. Yeah, you you have to start somewhere. You start small, and then you build on it. And once you know, it's not going to come. It's not going to come immediately. It's going to be a learning process. You know, it's the crawl, walk, run kind of scenario. Small city, small community, small city, and then duplicate that idea for bigger cities. A little bit bigger communities, lots of small communities, lots of small city functions, and then you end up in a huge city like Delhi.
Right. If you could talk about some of your existing projects which you have here in India, or how are you connected with the smart cities here in India?
By doing courses, by doing physical security courses for
Existing security companies.
For an existing security company here, yeah.
So the observation here is that security companies here, they do not, the existing staff is not a very well-read staff in India. Are you facing any challenges? When I say well-read, they are not very highly educated staff. For example, even the G4S for that matter hires people who are till class 12 pass. I have observed that. So.
Well, you would think that would present a challenge, but the reality is that the concepts are very simple, and so if the person can think, they can understand the concepts. And the way we've designed our courses is so that we can talk to all levels of the industry. A person that's just starting out, a college student that's just starting out wanting to get into the industry, or a person that's been in the industry for 45 years like me. The courses actually focus and make them think. Once they've taken a course, they'll never look at a building the same way again.
Is there a preference with someone with a military or a police background would be preferred?
No, my background's military, so I relate a lot to military people, but my experience in the last 3 or 4 years, it doesn't really matter where they're coming from, because the principles are the same. When you talk about military buildings, there's a higher risk to military buildings because they face a different threat. But the reality is that some of those threats transfer to the civilian sector as well.
All right. And what's the extent of video technology which would be used in smart cities here?
The thing about new technology is kind of give you a scenario of how security has evolved in the last few years. In the 80s, the idea was if there was a security problem, we'll put a guard on it. The guard can watch, he can see everything, he'll report it, we'll capture the bad guy. And then in the 90s, with the invention of the CCTV cameras, we decided, everyone was like, hey, that's a force multiplier, we can reduce the number of guards, so we'll put cameras, not understanding that you still need to have a guard to watch the camera, but it helped. So it was a tool. And now we've got to the point that we're trying to replace everything with technology, when the reality is technology is a tool for a person to use so that they can make a better decision. Now, we can reduce the amount of technology that we use if we design the building correctly, or if we design the environment correctly. So my friends that are camera company people, their idea is let's sell as many cameras as we can because we make money when we sell cameras. But the reality is let's use cameras that are effective. Let's use them in an effective way. I read an article this morning, they're talking about 1.5 million cameras in Delhi alone. I can't imagine how they're going to manage that. I just can't imagine how they're going to manage that.
Well, the government is talking of homes for all by 2022. Do you think it's a far-fetched dream, the Homes for All project by Government of India? Because you can just understand for above 2 billion population, what would be the standards of those houses?
Wow, that's pretty ambitious. I don't know a lot about India yet. I plan to become smarter about India, but that's awful ambitious.
That falls under one of their Digital India and Make in India campaign.
Yeah.
So they are really talking about it. What?
I mean 2022?
22, that's right, 7.5 years now.
7.5 years. That's pretty ambitious. Because most of the time, a project takes 5 years to make it work. You know, you get the idea, then you start to design it, and you do all the things, and it takes about 5 years between the idea to end product. So that's pretty ambitious, especially since it's on such a large scale.
Right. Do you think there would be a time very soon where India would no longer need FBIs and CIAs if the president of USA is to come to India? That was, in a way, very embarrassing because we have the best resources. Even then, we had, despite the protocol, there were more than what was needed here. So,
I hope that they're I'm very proud to be an American. But I think sometimes we don't respect the rest of the world. The rest of the world has a lot to offer, and I think we need to be a little bit more humble and learn. In fact, my purpose of being here is for two reasons. One is to give what I know, and then to also take what is known by others, because it can only make us better if we exchange ideas instead of telling each other what to do, which that kind of bothers me.
If you could tell us a little about your existing course, about your organization is providing, Haines Securities.
Oh, well, we're doing security engineering classes all over the United States, in Europe now, here in India very shortly. We do classes all the time.
So is this the managers you're training as well,
We're training from construction companies, project managers, designers, architects, planners, engineers, just anybody that uses the building, actually. Yeah. Now, most of the design philosophies that we use don't really apply to homes. Although there are some things that homeowners can do if the building's designed correctly, they can assist them. But we're talking mostly about what we refer to as inhabited space, high volume inhabited space, 50 people or more. Most of the philosophies that we teach are about public buildings.
All right. So how do you think this concept would fit into a place such as Mumbai, where we have Dharavi, Asia's largest slum area? So how would that inhabitant placement take place while the buildings are being constructed in that particular place?
Wow, that's
because in Delhi too we have such existing slums. So where would the replacement be?
Yeah, they're gonna have to build some new sections. Yeah, but it's the thing about security, it's and the smarts, one of the misconceptions of smart cities is that we think it's all about having energy efficient buildings, when the reality is a smart city is more than just any energy efficient buildings, or buildings and traffic signals that can talk to each other, or ambulances that can talk to the police. It's more than that. It's creating the environment where people want to live and thrive. And so there are some philosophies that we can use that will make people want to be in that space. If there's high crime, people don't want to live there. So we need to design the crime out. Slums. People don't want to live in slums. They want to live in houses that protect them from the environment. But we have to design that. We have to make sure that they have running water, that they have electricity, that it's low crime area, that there are eyes on the community at all times. And there's a program that we use in the United States called Crime Prevention Through Environmental Design, and that it's actually a type of social engineering. It's designing the environment so that people will do the right thing. And if they don't do the right thing, someone else will see them. Now that brings up, okay, what happens when somebody sees something bad? Then they have to have confidence in the police that the police will come and do the right thing. So smart city is not just technology. It's also creating that environment where people want to live.
Right. Right. Something like United Kingdom, where they have the maximum number of surveillance happening, and the backup is 24/7. So.
Yeah, yeah. You know, one of the things that happened in Holland when there was the big migration from Eastern Europe and the Middle East is they passed some laws that required that you could not have a community that had over a certain percentage of one ethnic group. And so what that did is that caused integration so that the communities became one. Even though they were culturally different and the people looked different, spoke different languages, they really became a community. We lived in a community like that when I was working for the military. It was great. It was ideal, actually. You know, because next door I had a Dutch neighbor and next to me was a Mexican neighbor. So on the Cinco de Mayo, the Mexican holiday, we celebrated at his house. On the 4th of July was my house, and on the Dutch days it was at his house. It was great.
American independence the Mexican way.
It was perfect.
Right.
It was perfect environment.
Right.
You know?
Tolerance level does come down when you have a mixed community.
Yeah, because you start to, you know, it's about understanding. You know, intolerance is about not accepting, and we've got to get rid of that. We're better than that. Yeah, I mean, the human race is better than that.
Right. I have a question here. Your existing projects, is it business to business, or you're also catering to the government sector?
We're catering to all sectors. Single clients, independent entrepreneurs, businesses, government agencies, large corporations, multinationals. Yeah, we teach anyone that wants to be taught.
Great.
Yeah.
The last a statement here. Anything you would like to add with regards to this event or the entire smart cities concept?
Well, as far as this event goes, it's very well organized, wonderful staff, and it's smaller than a lot of the events that I've attended in the past. But I think it's a really good event. I think it's going to get bigger and better. I'm looking forward to the next one. Hopefully I'll be able to come back.
All right. Just one last extended question here. So much being talked about smart cities, and we have yet not defined the exact definition of what smart city is. India, I mean the government of India has yet not defined an exact definition. So what would a smart city mean to a layman who has come to attend this conference? What would be the takeaway for that person?
Yeah, I think we kind of touched on that before when I said, you know, most people think smart cities, it's energy efficient cities, technologies that are talking to each other, when the reality is a smart city is a place where people want to live. They want to live there because it's safe. They want to live there because they can raise their kids and know that their kids will have an opportunity to get a job when they are old enough, and they don't have to worry about their parents or their grandparents. You know, that I think that's what a really smart city is about. It's the whole concept of making a place desirable to live, where we tend to focus on the technology part because that's the driving thing these days. You know?
That's right.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much for
my
time.
pleasure. Thank you.